Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our second community update for Fullerton. We are beyond excited today. Last week was such a great session. We had Mayor Jennifer Fitzgerald and the Chief Executive Officer of St. Jude Medical Center, Brian Helleland, with us, gave a great update. We got tons of fantastic feedback, as well as a few questions about our public safety. So we thought we would bring on board Police Chief Dunn and Fire Chief Lozier for us today to answer any questions you guys have and get an update from these guys. So Joe, is there anything you would like to add as we get going?
No, I just want to say, hey, thanks for taking the time to join in with us today. And, there's a lot of questions in the community, and we're just doing our part to make sure that we get those answered for everybody. And I think you two men are just at the top of the list to get that completed. So thank you very much for joining us, and let's get the show on the road, as my dad would say.
Okay. And then just a couple, I call them housekeeping, but if you guys have questions, I am monitoring the Facebook Live. If you do have any questions for either Chief Dunn or Chief Lozier, just type it in on Century 21 Discovery's chat box under this video, and we will do our very best to answer any questions that you may have. So first off, I am going to say hello to Mr. Chief Dunn. Chief, he's the police chief of our wonderful city of Fullerton. He has been with the Fullerton Police Department since January of 2018 and has been named chief as of last August, correct?
Yes.
All righty. So if you want to go ahead and get started, Mr. Chief Dunn, and we will kick it off.
Well, thank you, Stephanie and Joe, for having us today. I've been asked to provide a brief update to the community about Fullerton PD's COVID response since the outbreak of this pandemic. Very early on, the chiefs of Orange County, we have our own association that's called OCOPSA, and all the police chiefs and the sheriff meet monthly to discuss strategies in law enforcement. And so when this outbreak began, all of us convened in properly socially distanced way and discussed strategies of how we could provide services for our communities without impacting the county's services to the best of our ability. So I came back and tasked my command staff with separating the department into basically kind of three areas. So those of our detectives that can work from home, we got them all set up through our IT division, and they've been working from home and clearing cases at a record rate. They also serve, so that was our detectives, crimes persons, crimes property, our gang unit, our directed enforcement team, and our school resource officers. And their other role is to serve as a contingent that could plug into patrol should a police patrol team be affected by COVID, because we know that once one person's infected, it's likely others will be, and we have to take a whole group of people out of service. And the sheriff had asked us, look, you need to have a plan for providing the basic services for your city. If you need us to come in and supplement, we can, but we can't promise that if your department got infected, we could provide policing to any of your municipalities. So we took that very seriously. And so we had a patrol contingent. We still do have the patrol contingent available to plug into patrol should there be anybody infected in our department. Then we took all of our mid-watch officers. Those are officers who come in about midday and work until about 3 a.m. And we placed them either on day shift or graveyard. And so we only had a day shift and a graveyard shift, and the two shifts never interact. So you would come into work, briefings are all done virtually, either via email or Zoom, this platform or others. Then you spend the 30 minutes we would normally spend in briefing, or sanitizing your car, and then you go out in the field by yourself. The only 2 officer units that we've allowed since the outbreak is those who are in training, field training. Obviously, they can't be out by themselves just yet. So, and we have had some people come down with sickness, luckily, knock on wood, not COVID, and that's taken some people out. We've had to plug some of those contingent forces in. And so our patrol is set up kind of day watch and night watch. Then our records section was completely shut off from the department, which is kind of a sad for them because they do like the interaction, but we didn't want any additional people going into those areas. And of course, our dispatch center was shut off to all visitors. We stopped having ride-alongs. We have a very robust retired senior volunteer program. Of course, they're of an age that is highly susceptible to contracting COVID. So we wanted to make sure they weren't interacting on our behalf of members of the public. So we suspended that program, and all of our other volunteer programs were suspended, our Explorers, et cetera. And so we wanted to just make sure that we took whatever steps necessary to protect our officers. We've given them PPE in the form of masks and gloves. We have plenty here at the station, thanks to many members of the Fullerton community who donated them to us, and stuff that we have purchased through the city purchasing department. And so to date, we haven't had anybody in our department come down with COVID, thankfully. We know that our neighbors have. We have provided some services to our neighboring agencies to kind of fill that gap for them. That's something that we do very well in this region. I think that would be kind of our initial response as far as personnel, et cetera, from the police department.
Going back, you did mention everybody is solo with the exception of the training officers. How is that changed at all, that process on how you're training new officers, or is it pretty standard?
So there's a kind of a two bifurcated process, if you will. Those who were in the academy, so officers who are not sworn in yet but are training to be officers, the academies were canceled or suspended, I should say. And so they've come back to the department. They help with sanitizing the vehicles. They also have to maintain physical fitness and study because they still have tests and other things that need to pass when the academy resumes. So that's one part that's going on. Those who have already graduated and are working their way through our field training program, which is about a six to 8 month program, those have remained the same. We have a very prescribed process they have to go through that's certified by post. And so we need to make sure that those tenets are met.
Excellent. Now, officers responding to calls, how are they handling any types of calls when they're going out? Obviously, they have their masks and gloves, but I'm assuming they're not necessarily maybe entering a property when they would in the past, correct?
So we've asked them to make those decisions. I mean, this job is so dynamic, it's very difficult to prescribe to them when they can and can't do something. So we give them the tools and the latitude to go to a call and triage that call based on the facts that they have at the time, and then respond appropriately. We would encourage them not to have to walk into a residence. If they can call someone outside and have a conversation outside, that's better. But the nature of our job often requires us to go inside. We still enforce laws. The laws aren't relaxed in some sense. People often ask me, for example, how is domestic violence calls at this time? Because people are home together a lot. Have they gone up? We've seen about a 13% increase in those. We watch them very closely, but the same services that were available pre-COVID are available to victims today, and the same laws apply, and we will arrest you, we will take you to our jail, and then you will end up in the county jail and they will house you. So we are still enforcing laws, and I use domestic violence as an example because it would be one where we would have to go to someone's house and go inside and things of that nature. So we still have to do what we have to do.
So I will not be speeding 100 miles an hour down Harbor Boulevard.
Please don't.
No. Joe, did you have a question?
No, I think you hit them all on that one very well. Thanks, Steph.
Chief Dunn, so a lot of the parks are closed in the city of Fullerton, correct? And the stairs, and those are still closed?
They are.
Okay, and is there any enforcement on the closures? How are your officers handling that?
So one of the other contingencies, so right before the COVID outbreak, we assisted the city of La Habra with a search warrant on a murder. And that took our SWAT team, and Fullerton is part of the North Orange County SWAT, and we have the largest contingent. And so instead of taking those officers and plugging them back into patrol, they are our kind of patrol check contingent. So they ride single officer cars, 2 per shift, and they go to all of our closed city facilities and do patrol checks. To date, we haven't had to take any enforcement because most people have complied when we've contacted them. If we said, look, Lions Field's closed and the stairs are closed, please get off the stairs, people have complied. So we found that in our interaction with folks, as long as we explain what we're here for and why we're doing what we're doing, they have been pretty cooperative with us.
Excellent. Going in that same, I'm really happy to hear people are cooperative, but I know you guys get a lot of questions on how are you enforcing the new mandatory mask. We have to wear masks every time we go out. Are you guys enforcing that? How is that looking as from the police department? We do,
and I think there's 2 parts to that process. There is a county health order that doesn't require it, and then there's a city proclamation that does require it. Mm-hmm. That is accomplished through administrative citation, which really means that code enforcement has the lead as far as enforcement goes. But clearly at 2 o'clock in the morning when someone sees a violation, they can't call code enforcement, so they will call the police department. We handled those the same way we have handled essential business or non-essential business complaints. We come and we read. What we will do is we will respond in a very formal way. We let the person know that we have them on body-worn camera. We're going to read to them the order as it was proclaimed. We will talk them through what the expectation is. We even will provide them with a mask if they don't have them, because we have some we can pass out. If they still refuse, that will likely result in a police report being taken, documenting who the person is, and then we will forward that to filing. And there's a possibility that our city attorney's office could file charges on an individual, and then they could end up in jail at some point. And the same thing applies for non-essential businesses. We do it exactly the same way, except for that report gets forwarded to our district attorney's office for consideration. And to date, even over the weekend before last, we had a non-essential business complaint. We did it in that same way, and the owner complied and shut their doors.
Yeah. And it's, as a business owner ourselves, Joe and I, it is hard to, look at non-essential businesses and having them to have to close their doors for such an extended period of time. So I feel for them, and it's a difficult time for everybody right now.
And so do we. And I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to those who we have come in contact with that have been incredibly cooperative and understanding to our position and what the health professionals have required of us.
Excellent. And then you guys posted a very cool, in my opinion, cool photo video on, I think it was Instagram last week, stating that you had some police officers monitoring the trails, which they do from time and again anyways on dirt bikes or motorcycles. What does that look like from a police officer standpoint? What are you guys kind of looking for when you are monitoring the trails?
So, and this is kind of a split thing. I would say 50% of the people like when we do it and 50% of the people don't like when we do it. And we try to make both sides of it as happy as we possibly can. For those who live in areas that are near the trails, we do get frequent requests from them to see our motorcycle officers on the trail on the dirt bikes. We also get complaints from bicyclists who say that the dirt bikes leave ruts for them to have to ride through, and the noise bothers some people. And so we try to be sensitive or judicious in our application of the deployment of the dirt bikes. We also have electronic bicycles that we deploy on there, and we also have a Polaris Ranger that we deploy on the trails. And so when the COVID outbreak happened, if people think back, the weather wasn't really conducive to being outside a ton. We had that whole week period of rain. That last weekend, we knew it was going to be super hot outside. People were going to be drawn outdoors. We wanted to make sure that they could enjoy our trail system, but at the same time be respectful of others who are very sensitive to the fact that they want to be socially distanced and have their coverages and things of that nature. So our approach was really just to be docents, if you will, of the trails and let them know ask us questions about the trail system. How do I get from here to there? If I keep going this way, where do I get to? And hey, if you're a little too close, or if you're congregating in a big group, we were going to remind you, just separate a little bit, give yourself some distance. We also passed out water to people because it was super hot. So our focus when we go out there is more informational, educational, and cooperative than it is enforcement.
Excellent. Joe?
Hey, Chief, if we got lucky and you had all 150,000 residents on this call right now, what would be the one thing that sticks out in your mind that would you to ask that you need assistance with? What would make everybody's lives a whole lot easier from your point of view?
I have been so impressed with this community and their response to this. I would say just keep doing what you're doing. I know that there are members of our community who are suffering. There are business owners that haven't been able to open. We are sympathetic to that, and we will be happy to help you in any way that we can. I know that the city's taking great strides to try to get a little shot in the arm of the business community too. So I would look to them for some guidance and some resources. Keep interacting with our officers. Our officers, are law enforcement in general. There's definitely a standoff from the community just by nature of what we do. And our officers definitely feel it even more during COVID. And I would say, in my experience at the Fullerton Police Department, our officers are actually wanting to be members of this community and interacting with the community. So reach out to them, have a conversation with them, get to know them, and we'd like to get to know you. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for being cooperative with us thus far. We're only here to try to do what's right and try to make both sides of this equation happy.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you guys are here just make sure things are done right. And I have the pleasure of knowing quite a bit of your officers, and every single one of them, they're just fantastic. And if you do have the opportunity to have a conversation with some of them, they are members of our community. A lot of them live here. A lot of them send their kids to school here. So just, reach out and say hi and thank them for what they do, because they for sure have a thankless job. So thank you, Chief Dunn.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's also the opportunity when you pull up next to them and, roll down your window and say thank you. Those guys are doing an amazing job. And whenever I do that, they'll sit a little taller in their seat. And at first they think you're going to yell at them, but after it's done, it's like, they sit a little taller and they're happy to see that. And, that makes everybody's world a little bit better. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to Chief Adam Lozier. He is the fire chief for both Brea and Fullerton. I have had the pleasure of knowing him for almost 10 years now, which is crazy. I knew Chief Lozier when he was captain with the Fullerton Fire Department. And Chief, I don't know if you knew this, but you were one of my very first ride-alongs. I was with you. So, and for those of you that don't know, my husband's a Fullerton firefighter, which is why I have such a cool relationship with Chief Lozier too. But Chief Lozier became the chief of both Fullerton and Brea about almost a year and a half ago. So welcome to a new-ish position. I think you're doing a fabulous job. And let's get into it with you. How are your firefighters adjusting to the shift with COVID?
Well, thank you very much, both for you having me and Chief Dunn on here to talk and give a little bit of update to the community. It's been a crazy ride for us, no different than it has been for the members of the community. We're going on probably our 8th week now, and it's things are constantly changing, and we don't expect that aspect of the incident to change over the next couple of weeks as we begin to hopefully de-escalate or unwind to back of what our new normal will be. But backing up to the beginning of this, the firefighters that were responding to the calls, for us, this is our job. And so when the members of the public call for an emergency, especially medical related, we respond. And so for my department, our protocols really didn't change. As far as our response, how we respond, we did put into place early on several personal protective equipment upgrades to calls, along with dispatch issues as well. So if what we started out right out of the gate was, as a call would come in to our dispatch center, that dispatcher would go through a series of questions that would direct them down to a person as possibly having COVID symptoms, which would be transferred to our engine, our crews that were responding. That would trigger them to wear advanced PPE. And so normally when they go to a call, they'll wear gloves, they'll wear protective eyewear, and that's for about 99% of the calls that are medical related. That's what they typically would wear. But with the different ways of transmission for COVID-19, we had advanced measures that were put into place that included a respirator, a gown, and gloves and eyewear. So guys would wear that, or the firefighters would wear that as they arrived on scene. Now for us, a little bit different than police department, the dispatcher is able to tell or talk to the patients, and they gave them guidance that if they're able to come out, if they're ambulatory, because our perspective, similar to PD, is that we have a certain number in our workforce, and our overall objective was to be able to carry out providing service to the community. But that would take two parts. The one part is obviously the members would have to do their part in wearing the right gear and being extra cautious. But the other part to that was the community, and that was everybody wearing, doing the social distancing, staying at home, disinfecting, all those measures that have been taken in place. And that has been able to keep our membership intact so that we continue our service. So to continue on with the typical call, our crews would respond, and we have 4 people on each fire engine or fire apparatus. When they get on scene, we would limit the initial contact with a COVID-19 person to only one of those 4. That one person would go in and they'd be fully in their advanced PPE, find out what the actual problem is, the status and the level of that patient's particular problem at that time. And based upon that, they would either bring the patient out to get into the ambulance and be transported just with that one person, or if there needed more care, they would call on the rest of the crew who would come in also their advanced PPE and take care of the patient, depending on the level of care that they required. But the overall objective, obviously, was to deal and help that patient to get to a better place and transport them to where they needed to go. We're very fortunate that we have a very good relationship with our local hospitals, St. Jude being of course, our local hospital here. And so very early on, we liaison with Brian Hillellen from St. Jude, with our nurse. We have a nurse that's on staff, Rhonda Rosati, who served as our safety manager and also our liaison, to make sure we are all operating off the same sheet of music, because we are one unit. From the time we make contact with that patient to the time we drop them off at the hospital, there's a lot of different pieces that can go sideways, and we wanted to make sure that we kept that patient as safe as possible. We kept our personnel as safe as possible, and we still provided that level of expedited care to take care of that particular patient. So that relationship with St. Jude and our other local hospitals has been fantastic, and that's provided a level of certainty for our members that have responded. So some other items that we took care of within our fire stations. Our members are there for 24 hours a day, and so that is their second home. So a lot of the things we had to do as far as changing, firefighters by nature are very clean. Stephanie can attain to that.
Very much.
Attest to that. But we had to take it one
story about that.
I'm sure. But we had to take it one step further and initiate further cleaning procedures within the station, masks when members were within distance of one another, and different than any other type of service that's provided, our people have to ride together. So that's why you never see generally at the grocery store or just one firefighter there. Usually it is the group of 3 or 4 members that are there. And so for this same reason, whenever they are riding together or in proximity of one another, we required them to wear a mask. We also started doing temperature checks at the beginning of their shift. So those are 2 measures that we took, 3 measures with the disinfecting of both the apparatus and the station, to make sure that at least while they were at the station, at their second home, it was as clean as possible so that they can respond effectively to the community. And then secondly, that when they got off shift, that we did our best to protect them when they go home, and they're not taking anything home with them. And that was real important to me, because if somebody gets sick at home, I know my personnel, is like anybody else, has to take care of their family. And so that takes them out of rotation, able to serve the community. So it's a circular process that you have to make sure you dot all your I's so that you can provide this care. And membership's been fantastic by understanding and obliging by these advanced measures. And so we've had a couple tests by exposures. I'll call them near misses, but no one has tested positive for COVID-19 in the fire department, which I'm very, very thankful for. And like Chief Dunn said, without it being a team effort from the community and public safety, and you hear it go out there that, the community staying home to protect the healthcare workers, and that there's a lot of truth to that. We understand 100% the impact it's had on families, from the schools to to the businesses, to the hospitals, just the whole aspect of our community is doing their part and suffering to a certain extent through this. But without it, our numbers, we do think, would be a lot different. And so although our numbers are low, but we've had some deaths within our county, and we have people in our community that have transmitted the virus. It is because of the actions that we have taken, and we're very proud of those, but both the community and then the city. From an incident management perspective, we have moved forward with opening our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center, for the city, and that is taking a holistic approach to the entire incident, to where this COVID-19 isn't just overseen or taken care of by Chief Dunn or myself, but the entire city is involved in it and have been focused on it since we opened that up on March 16th, when we proclaimed this as a city disaster, or city medical emergency. So all the departments have been working very collaboratively with the effort of keeping the community safe, and providing direction and the leadership to weather the storm, and are continuing to do so as we look to get out of this situation, and somewhat for the brighter days that are yet to come here.
Chief Lozier, as far as your call volume goes, are you guys seeing an increase or a decrease, or pretty steady as far as your calls coming in?
Initially, the calls went up, and that was, I think part of that had to do with what the weather was. The weather was rainy. A lot of people were at home. We were just on the tip of this. But as it has evolved, our call volume has gone down by about 15 to 20%. And that's been confirmed with the hospitals and with the ambulance transports as well. And has also been similar with other surrounding agencies.
And I'm going to take this opportunity because when we had Brian Helleland from St. Jude on with us last week, he made a point, and I'm sure both of you would agree, that for a while he was seeing people with some of them serious health issues like stroke, heart attack, that were trying to avoid going into the hospital for fear of getting infected. And his message to the community was, don't be afraid. We have safety measures in place, just like you've heard from both police chief and the fire chief. And don't put your own health at risk by thinking you're avoiding, COVID by staying home and not calling for help. So
yes, no, that is a very important message. And I would say one of the most important messages, if I can get across with this forum, is please know that if you have any type of medical emergency, you are safe to call 911. You are safe to be seen by your firefighters. You are safe to be transported to the nearest hospital. And those hospitals have taken great measure and forethought to protect any of their patients coming into their facilities to treat you for whatever your emergency is. So emergency is generally defined by something that you cannot handle. And so if you have that emergency, please call 911. Let us evaluate you and feel confident that you are going to be able to be transported, evaluated by a doctor, and your particular emergency taken care of.
And if I could just add a personal note to that, because agree 100%. As a fire wife too, just when you're talking to dispatch, make sure you're giving them accurate information. I know sometimes people were concerned that if they said they were feeling symptoms, they didn't think that, the fire department would respond, or vice versa. And it's just be completely honest with the dispatcher, and they will show up and take care of you no matter what. There's, so.
No, and that's true. We did have people that, felt like if they did say they had, they're running a temperature, they had a dry, any of the symptoms, that we would treat them differently, or they wouldn't be accepted into a hospital. And that's not the case. We've taken those measures so that we can continue to carry out our mission to take care of our community. One thing, Stephanie, I wanted to emphasize also, as far as some of the services that we have continued besides our medical and fire responses. We have continued from our fire prevention standpoint to conduct the hazardous material inspections that are required by the state. Those are ongoing, and so we have our staff that, as those have come up, they've gone out to the field to take care of those. And that is obviously a very important inspection that has to continue for the safety of the community. Those members that do those inspections have the same protective measures that any of our other workers that have gone out to interact with the public. And then another piece to that works with the building department is our plan checks. So our plan check specialist has also been working with the building department to make sure that as plans come in that need to be reviewed, that process is continuing, and that whether it is development, it is temporary tenant improvements, those are all continuing and progressing forward in light of the circumstances that are going on. So we're trying, again, to do our best to be able to increase or encourage business operations where possible, so that they're not stymied along the way. So hopefully the public has been realizing that, and it may be just a little bit slower, but hopefully it's still progressing.
Glad you brought that up. Thank you. Joe, I saw you writing some stuff down. Do you have a question?
I just want a couple of comments. Is that there's an old saying out there: when preparation meets opportunity, success happens. And we were talking about that last week with Brian and Mayor Fitzgerald. And I think both the police department and the fire department are well prepared. And the funny thing is when you're preparing, you're not really preparing for something like COVID. And it's like, what are you preparing for? We're preparing for something, and it appears that whatever that X factor is slipped nicely into this slot. And you guys both of you have done a terrific job of really being prepared for that crisis that has hit our city. Well, our city, what the heck, the world. So that's well done, gentlemen. Thank you.
Chief Lozier, I'm going to ask you the same question that Joe asked Chief Dunn, which is there anything that the community can do, should be doing differently to not only better assist your team in responding to calls, or just maneuvering through daily life? For the most part, I think the community is doing a fantastic job. And I think the tough part is when people don't have any tie to somebody that's experienced COVID-19. It's hard to have that context or that perspective. And the only thing I can say to the listeners out there is what you're doing out there in your homes, in your the businesses that have been able to remain open to serve the community, the restaurants, the hospitals, anything along those lines, taking those protective measures, the social distancing, the mask wearing, all those things have enabled my members to continue to do their job to serve you. And so I appreciate that. And I would encourage you to stay the course. We're getting close here. I know the weather's beautiful outside. I know there's, the kids have been pent up now for 6 weeks. And I also get that a lot of the business stores have been closed for several weeks now. We're just about there, and I would just encourage you to stay the course. We're doing our best to make sure we have our I's dotted, our T's crossed, so that when we provide that direction of opening, that it's in the safest fashion for the greater good, and we can put this behind us. And, we talked about this last week too. We've been isolating and quarantining for which is crazy, almost 2 months now. And it's not, it feels like we should be done, but we're not. So it's a nice reminder that, just because the weather's nice or, we've been stuck inside for 6, 7, 8 weeks now, it's not, a free for all and nothing's back to normal. So, speaking of reopening though, both Chief Dunn and Chief Lozier, are you guys working with the city on steps to reopen the city? Are you working on a plan, to get the reopening going? How is that looking?
Want to go first, Adam? Go
ahead. Yes. So the different departments, that's one of the, we have the initial response and the prep for an incident, the management of the incident, and the follow-up to the incident is the repopulation or the recovery piece. So most importantly from this, we realize there's an economic impact. So right from the get-go, our finance section has been tracking all the costs related to this. And then our planning section has been putting together plans from each of the different departments for the city to repopulate City Hall and to take whatever measures that we have the ability to take to help with getting businesses their doors open and encouraging business to begin again. So we realized early on that was going to be an important part to this incident. And I think Joe said this has been very tough because for a lot of it, it's invisible. There's nothing really tangible unless, like I said, you had a personal connection to it. So you can see it on TV, but unless you had a family member, friend that was touched by this virus, it's not like an earthquake where you see something that's damaged where we have to fix. So that's also made this a little bit more complicated and complex as far as how we deal with it. But no less, the economic impact has been very real. And we realize that the response to the virus is part of this, but the follow-up response for the economy and the betterment of the city is equally as important. And so city departments are formulating that or have formulated that, again, in a very collaborative effort and with members from the community as well. Chief?
And I would say, from a policing perspective, when you have something like this happen, you really look to your partners in public safety and our fire department who operate in this incident command system on all their calls and events. And so they've kind of been our guiding force as a city of how we're going to go about tackling this. When Joe mentioned that X factor, fire is really good about plugging in to their system, whatever the situation is, and they've really guided us through this. So I think we're poised to do the best we can to recover whatever kind of funding we can recover from the federal government. I think we're poised internally to have a plan. All of us have submitted plans. Ours is kind of a two-phase approach where we will open up internally first, get people back to working inside, and then we will go back to our external work as well. But that'll be kind of predicated on what our governor says and what our Orange County public health officers say. So we're still looking to those who are kind of issuing the orders, and then we will adapt our plans as those come down. But I do want to say we're in a great position today because of the entire executive team, but from our partners at Fire who really led that effort for us. So.
I have a question for you, Chief Dunn, that just came in. Does the police chief or the city mayor enforce the closure through local discretion, or is it through a mandatory directive from Sacramento?
Are you talking about a closure of a business?
Mm-hmm. I would think so, yeah.
So if we get a report of someone having a non-essential business, which we have had happen, and as I kind of outlined before, we respond with the county's public health order and we read it to them on tape. We identify who either the manager on duty is or the owner who's present. Generally, in these cases, we've seen the owner present, obviously. And we read the order and tell them what the expectation of it is. There is an enforcement component to that. However, it isn't one of those ones where you're going to go straight to the county jail for violating it. What we do is we take the body-worn camera video, or we have admonished you as to what the order is and that you're out of compliance. We write a corresponding police report. We package all that up and we send it to the DA's office. They will ultimately determine if there's charges filed. So how that would work, like any other violation of law, is they could go and issue a warrant for your arrest through the judicial system, and then we would come back and actually place you in custody for that. So that's how we're handling those.
And somebody asked a similar question, not necessarily from like an enforcement standpoint for police work, but last week to Mayor Fitzgerald, and she's going off of the city's going off of the guidance and the mandates from the county and from the state. So it's not like, you know, the city of Fullerton is sitting here making some of these harsh rules. It's coming from a higher power, if you will.
That's absolutely accurate. That's absolutely accurate.
Okay.
Each county has their own public health officer, and that's kind of, and Adam can speak to this more, but that's why you kind of see the disparate rules kind of from county to county, is because each doctor who kind of governs how this public health is going to go issues their orders in different ways. Definitely.
And then another question for you, Chief Dunn. We've received a few comments and questions as far as vandalism or cars being broken into or stolen, and that seems to be an uptick on that. Is there anything you can address as far as that goes?
So we have seen an increase in thefts from vehicles in this last month. I'm trying to look, I have the stats on the screen next to me. That's why I'm looking to the right, because I knew this would come up. Let's see. Our vandalisms are up about 31%. Our motor vehicle thefts are about 27%. And then like I mentioned, our domestic violences are up about 13%, 12%. And one of the things we attribute, so what we do have a crime analyst here at the department, and when these types of things are an uptick, she's charged with looking at kind of the root cause. Can you help us direct our limited resources in a way that can affect any of those crime trends? What we found is a lot of those vehicles that had been broken into were kind of associated with our trail system, and they were generally people who left something of value in plain view. In one case, it was a fanny pack with a firearm in it that someone just left on their seat. So we would encourage people, like we do all the time, to not keep their valuables in any place where someone can see them. And you could clearly see, like, if there was multiple in one location, people that didn't have anything didn't have their window broken. People who had stuff got their window broken. So it does work. If you just move it somewhere else, they will move on from car to car to car. The same thing with our motor vehicle theft. Those were already kind of on the rise. I don't have any empirical data to support this, but a lot of what we see in these veins is the changes in our laws and lessening the from a felony to a misdemeanor or these types of crimes, because when you're arrested for a misdemeanor, you generally get booked at the Fullerton jail, and then you're released on a citation in hopes that you go to court whenever your court date is. And so a lot of those kind of property crimes and the uptick in those, in our business, it's thought by the chiefs that it's attributable in some ways to changes in laws, but the data is still not there to support those types of anecdotal thoughts as far as the chiefs go.
And along with those questions and comments about the vandalism, I'm seeing a lot of people state that they love seeing you guys out and about and patrolling. So keep it up, I guess.
We will.
I believe it. Joe, is there anything else from you that you would like to address with these two fine gentlemen?
Yeah, there is. There's two things I want to hit on. The first one is that we've been talking a lot about social distancing, and I think some of the words have changed around, and here's what I have to say, which is we must strengthen our social well-being and connectivity, because I think a lot of that has gone away by the social distancing, while maintaining our physical distancing required in our present COVID-19 environment. So, I think we've got to remain social, and and social distancing is, I just, those two words kind of bug me. It's more physical distancing than anything, and picking up the telephone and calling your neighbor, calling your friends, calling your whatever, and just checking in with folks. And then along those lines, I got to tell you two gentlemen that I asked a couple of folks over at the hospital, I said, how do you not cry every day? And where that came from was the first, I call it the drive-by, the first drive-by that you guys put on, where the police and fire came in, and on Valencia Mesa, and just showered the hospital with love. And and I asked those guys, how do you not? Stephanie has a hard time just thinking about it and not welling up. But the impact that you two men make and your departments make on the city, on the hospital, on everybody who's giving it their all, and when you say thank you to them, it means it's incredible. And that was an incredible moment, I think, for the city of Fullerton. And I just want to say thank you to that. And I know it was just over the top appreciated by the hospital. Very cool.
Yeah, no, we were definitely happy to do that. And, for speaking for fire, we have that patient for a short period of time, but you definitely realize that, the team that's within the hospital doors, they're the ones that take care of those patients and get them out the door. And they have a very important job. And so, it was important for us to recognize that, hey, we appreciate you guys for what you do on every aspect of the hospital, whether you're cleaning something, you're treating a patient, you're doing documentation, whatever it is. Sometimes we have heroes too, and hats off to all healthcare workers for that. And it was very, you're right, Joe. It was a very neat moment. I think for our guys, our people, as well as the medical staff.
Well done.
In closing, is there anything Chief Dunn or Chief Lozier you guys would like to add? Get one last word in.
Sure. I just want to tell everybody that there are a host of people here at the police department, the fire department, and the city that are here working for you. We are working every day to try to help you rebuild after this if you've suffered economic impact or personal impact. If you could see every day what I see that goes on in this city, you would be proud of Fullerton. And we have a saying here at Fullerton PD, and that we're Fullerton PD proud. What I think this COVID thing has done, if you can get a positive out of such a negative, worldwide negative, is that it has made me, and I know my staff, Fullerton proud. And so we hope that you will all continue to stay the course. We are here for you. Reach out to us if you need us, and we'd be there to support you.
Excellent. Chief Lozier, any last words from you?
No, and just to echo what Chief Dunn said, he said it very well. And I know him, myself, we're very proud of our firefighters, our officers, for engaging with the public, for taking care of our community, for working together as a team, public safety. For something like this, working as a team is very, very important for Chief and I. So a lot of the stuff we do, we definitely bounce it off of one another so that we're going in the same direction, and we're providing the best safety precautions and responses possible and taking care of our people. I know for the Chief and for myself, our people are very important to us, and we realize we have to take care of them in order for them to take care of the people that are out there listening. And I couldn't be more proud of them and what the city's done as far as our community reaching out to us. So, thank you very much for having us on.
Thank you. And then one last question, is there, for either one of you, is there like a phone number or an email that anybody can, if they have further questions or specific questions about any cases that they can contact? Is there a good number or email?
Yeah, they can email mine, rdunn@fullertonpd.org.
Okay. I will put that in the comments. I know we had a couple questions on that.
Stephanie, I'll just give you mine too. It's Adam L@fullertonfire.org.
Okay. And Joe, any last words from you?
Yeah, I just want to, Chief Dunn, you teed it up pretty nicely for us. And we've got that marquee out in front of our office. And right now what it says on it over the last couple of days is Fullertonians, we've got this.
Nice.
And so, you guys are all a big part of that and part of that leadership. Thank you very much. Stephanie?
Thank you.
In closing, I want to say thank you guys so much for spending a significant amount of time with us today during your busy schedules. I know that's a lot. I hope everybody watching this got something out of this and maybe a sneak peek into the police world and the fire world. I think they both did a fantastic job of opening the doors, if you will, and letting you guys know what they're doing and what's going on. And as a reminder, as a citizen of Fullerton, a proud citizen of Fullerton at that, Chief Dunn and Chief Lozier did an excellent job of, reminding us that their guys and gals out on the field every day are there just to do their best to make our lives better. So the next time you see a police officer or a firefighter in the city of Fullerton, make sure you say thank you. We're getting a ton of thank yous through our Facebook feed. But you guys are incredible leaders of two departments within our city, and we just can't thank you enough for your time today. And with that, I think we're done.
All right.
So
Charge on.
Charge on, everybody, and have a great day, and we'll see you next time.